All right, good morning, people. Bob here is back once again. You guys know the drill. Let's get right down to it. Let's get rid of this particular screen now. Let's go to the daily chart to get us started, as we like to do. All right. So yesterday's video obviously did not age very well. Got this move all the way to this top trend line, which I believe I'd had that added on yesterday. Got the move to the top trend line, immediate sell-off. Realistically, we should have been able to find support in several different places. This would have been a good place. This 19.4 would have been a good spot. That would have retested this trend line here. And instead, we just, Bitcoin just absolutely dumped right down through everything yesterday. Found its way down to a double bottom of this low here. Now look, here's the simple fact. Even though we did put in a higher high at one point yesterday, it wasn't a sustained higher high. And then we've come down, we've retested this low, exceeding this low. The likelihood is that throughout the day, we're going to see that this was probably close to the high for the day. Just, best guess at the moment. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't come and retest one of these levels and then pop up real hard again. And in fact, again, you look at the RSI, you look at the stochastic RSI, there are things to suggest that there's still the potential that this thing is going to move in the right direction. At this point, I would think that unless Bitcoin finds a way to reclaim 19.4 and actually hold it this time, that it's going to be tough to accomplish anything of that nature. And again, we've talked about this too. I mean, these moving averages are still twisted up. The 200 is still way up here at 28,000. We got a long way to go to retest that level out. But the simple reality is these things still need to be adjusted accordingly. The 80 needs to drag below the 100 at some point, which does mean that you probably have to put in a little more downside. So the question becomes, if we do continue downside, where do we get to? Well, the next realistic logical spot would probably be this 18,144 here. And then at that point, you're looking at this 17.6. And again, this trend line right here, I added that just to accommodate these guys, these two right here. But then also you've got a lot of trend lines that are down here at this point. This, if we wanted to call this a little falling wedge, a retest there puts it right down here. So there are some different things that we could look at there. Now let's assume that this rising channel pattern was valid. If in fact it is or was valid, or however you want to say that, measured move puts us right down here. That's based on the distance from here to here. You lose this level, and you actually get that. Say we close out the day right down here. Maybe we officially get a double bottom there. Maybe it's some bullish divergence. But the simple fact of the matter is, if this thing's not going to push up today, there's a strong chance that, again, it does close out the day down here, closer to 18,100, or at least touches down there at some point today. And again, a lot of it is predicated based upon the idea that right now we're holding this parabola, this rounded bottom, but we're in significant danger of losing it. And then you've got, I think, really this trend line right here is the one that ultimately, because there was a point in time yesterday that thing was touching this, and obviously that's still acting as resistance. Well, let's see where the resistance came in here basically, although that was a lower level of resistance, comes up here. We haven't lost this area though. This in essence, this could have been a good back test from an RSI standpoint. So there is still some feasibility. This thing does push to the upside. I just don't know how realistic it is at this point. But again, I'm not, in no way, shape, or form am I going to rule out the idea that this thing could very, very seriously push to the upside and make a significant move still. I mean, this had to have cleared out a lot of sell orders for sure yesterday. So can we get there? We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out for sure. But and then actually, I meant to keep this added on this chart. So here's the deal. Like there, we'll zoom out as far as we can where we can see it logically. Like there is a ton of support. A ton of orders all the way down to here. But right now, the bulk of the orders are in this range, and that's a combination of buying and selling orders. And it does, the thing about this is that it's not perfect in that it takes a visible range, whatever I put in here for the data as far as, how far out I zoom. So if I come out here, you're going to notice that the blocks change versus if I'm zoomed in on the action right now. And again, here you can see lots of action right here. Surprise, surprise, where's the price been hanging out? Okay, you got a decent amount right here, and then you lose it all, and then here you start to have a little bit less volume profile as well. So again, as far as this all goes, you push up above this level. The problem is that I used to look at this and just think, oh man, you get over this and this thing moves. Well, yeah, I mean it could, but the simple fact of the matter is this is a combination of buying and selling right here, right? These volume profiles, it's buying and selling. So if we take into account that there are less people buying and selling here, it's just as feasible actually too that this thing wouldn't continue to push to the upside, right? Or here, when you get to those places where there's very little volume, and this is this one's a good one to show you just how significant the buying interest is from here up. But you get down below there, and a lot of times, again, same concept. If there's no volume down here, that means nobody is buying and or selling, which means that the bulls don't think that it's getting down that far. And that the bears are not willing to try to push the price down further should it get to that level, right? So the fact that there's very, depending on where you're looking at in the range, the fact that there's very little volume below here means that a lot of people believe that the bottom is somewhere in here, right? That in fact we are going to turn around off that level. It's not a given by any means. You can see here this thing right here is the point of control. It's at around 19.6. Really, that, I guess if you look at it from that standpoint, that's a level we need to reclaim to really feel good about pushing back to the upside. Which makes sense, because yesterday we were talking about like trying to get 19.4 and hold that. So the fact that 19.6, 19.7 or whatever is a fairly big deal, based on the limited action below that level. Well, then again, we want to see it turn around up and over that. But again, this mess of garbage right here is going to potentially prevent that from happening. And again, the fact that this is so far away still. But again, we shall see. We shall see. Now on the weekly chart, again, we were right up here yesterday when we were initially talking, and we kind of looked over and said, all right, yeah, I mean this is a level that could potentially be a high for the week. This could be a high for the week. This could be a high for the week, right? So right now we're back below this 19.2. Obviously, would love to see that thing start moving to the upside some more. Assuming that we treat this little trend line here, and it's just a tiny one, but let's zoom in a little bit. Assuming that we treat this as a valid trend line, and we say, all right, well, this was the uptrend. Uptrend was lost right here. Now we're trying to curl back up to it. It could very well, the RSI could very well swing all the way back up to here, feasibly. And then maybe we've actually got something of a ascending triangle going here. Yeah, right? Something like this, maybe an ascending triangle, at which point this thing could potentially come back up here, smack down back here, and then make a move. Or it's just going to, again, if it just rolls over, I mean, where's our longer term trend line? Well, that's right here. We'd lost that previously here, and that was a pretty nice bearish fake out there. Now the question is, does this thing actually need to come back down here? If it does, my goodness, what's the price going to be if it goes back down there? So we're going to find out real soon. I mean, again, I'd like to think that we're not going to lose these lows, but again, none of that's a given at this point by any stretch. The weekly stochastic RSI is back in sell territory. We've kind of got a break of this pattern here, but again, a retest on the MACD is actually a feasibility as well. Same concept. That would roll it down a little bit. But right now, the bulls are fighting. We're going to zoom in on some shorter term time frames as usual. Right now, the bulls are fighting. They know what levels they need to defend, and we're there. We're defending those levels. Just got to get the push. And again, this is really a big deal right here. This level right now, this is the first week we had below it. We got to recover it. Ideally this week. And again, this was a good start. I know that again, my video didn't age well yesterday. That we were looking for support and then more upside. We didn't get it. We crashed back into this pattern. But the crazy thing is it's still inside of this rounded bottom pattern. So unless we officially lose that, you got to assume that it holds up, right? And it's something that maybe we would see like maybe it falls, like if it falls down here today and it doesn't recover it within the same day and it actually closes below this level, whatever day that may be, then we got to start looking at where the trouble may come into play, right? For right now, until this level is lost, we've got to assume it holds up as well as potentially this rounded bottom pattern. And then additionally, if Bitcoin can close out the day, even somewhere in here, then there's at least a chance that this trend line here stays intact. So again, I'm going to be looking realistically, the level is probably around 18.8 as far as the important level right this moment. We lose 18.8, and then you're probably coming right back down to 18.5. And if we've already been down there a few times, so this is the back test of it. Got to get the push off of that level, or again, you run the risk that this thing does not sustain an upside move, thus down here. Otherwise, again, we start to recover some levels today, and then all of a sudden, an uptrend here remains a much more likely outcome, right? So a couple different things there. Let's go ahead and jump on over to the 4-hour chart. 4-hour chart, I mean, let's be honest, this thing doesn't look amazing. However, and again, sometimes I hate trying to put rounded bottoms on a chart because there are a lot of times that things just look like rounded bottoms. And maybe this would have been a fairly reasonable representation, maybe here. So I guess you could say that at least looking at the 4-hour, let's assume that this is a valid trend line here. Probably have lost a rounded bottom, but maybe it's here. And then all of a sudden you're saying, all right, well, this actually, if this thing just pushes up a little bit here in this 4-hour candle, then we're in business. But right now the 4-hour is in a slight downtrend. And let's see. I suppose, just to keep things simple, this is probably your best looking trend line right here. And again, Bitcoin's got to make a decent push to the upside here within the next 2 hours approximately. Well, there's a 4-hour chart. Yeah. There we go, 4-hour chart. So Bitcoin's got to make a pretty decent, either way, I mean, everything still holds true here. Bitcoin's got to make a decent push here in the very near future. Otherwise, again, we're just bearishly retesting that trend line right there, at which point we've officially lost the 21 simple moving average as well. And that's something we got to reclaim. You cannot get any upside without having the support of the 21 moving average, regardless of the time frame. But there are a few things that, again, I mean, you could argue that this is actually a decent back test of that trend line right here. Right now it's back inside of it, but again, you could argue that maybe we're working on that. If we bring this in a little bit further, this is a perfect retest of this trend line. So again, that's why we're just looking at support and resistance. I mean, you can't assume that what you've done is perfect, right? That that, you're looking at it, you're like, yep, that's exactly it, that's totally right, but you're not always going to be right, and that's the thing about trading. You just always have to understand and appreciate the fact that you're not going to bat 1,000, and that even the best, the best hitters in the world, when we're talking baseball, they were lucky to bat, at 350, so. Again, you're talking about 1 out of 3 there, 1 out of, as far as baseball goes. Here, you certainly want to average like 60% or better. You want to be, you certainly want to be in the green as far as that part goes. But, it's interesting. I mean, we just keep getting bounces off this level. The 4 hour, Hike and Ashy candles are good at identifying potential reversals. This was kind of an indecision candle here. This one is green right now. Still got 2 hours left. If it maintains the green, great. If not, again, we're probably looking moving back down to this region again, if not a little bit lower. Oops, let's not adjust that one. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to take up a whole lot more time today. I've already exceeded what I expected would be my talk quota for today. Just because, again, we're really now we're just ranging at this point. When we get pops, they're great. Starts clearing out sell orders, but right now we've got a situation where each of the last few times we've tried to reclaim the 200 simple on the 4 hour chart, it's just been here came up above it real nicely, just died after that. Here came up above it, didn't put in a massive move above it, just died below it. So it's probably, we're probably going to see another move toward it at some point here, whether it means we got to come down here first or whether it's going to kind of creep its way up over the next several hours, days, whatever the case may be. But again, the 200 simple we got to look at as potential rejection again. So best case scenario on the 4 hour chart says 19,813, maybe 20,126 is a top side move that you could possibly expect right this moment. And then potentially up to here, depending on if you get a good clean break of the 200 and actually get support of it. Otherwise, again, we're rolling down here, and potentially this would be a good trend line. That's down here 17.6-ish, 17.8. So that's what we're looking for. Again, now I talked about the potential that this was going to, I moved this trend line here. We talked about the potential that when it was here that this was going to reject. Well, now the question is, the bulls managed to keep us out of bear territory on the 4 hour, but does this line now reject the price action and the RSI roll over? That's what we're here to find out in the next little bit. So again, we got a couple hours left to go. So let's zoom in on the 1 hour chart and just see exactly what that's suggesting. Now, this is an interesting one because here we've actually got increasing volume on increasing price, which is a bullish sign. However, the main thing that I'm looking at here is, the best case scenario, this thing's forming out into an inverse head and shoulder where you basically got a left shoulder, this is the head, and this thing maybe forms into a shoulder. So right now it would be logical that this thing isn't going to break through here. Maybe it's going to find support here, maybe down to 18.8. If it does and then reverses course back to the upside, all of a sudden you start looking at a measured move for that inverse head and shoulder, and it's going to carry us up somewhere into the 19.6, 19.7 range. So that's what we're looking for there. And again, if that does not work out, then you look at where the price action was getting stuffed at before, and it really didn't. It was struggling to get above 19.3 basically on this side. So then all of a sudden, maybe you look at this and you say, actually, it's not an inverse head and shoulder here, even though it looks like it could be. But you've actually got a head, shoulder. So if this thing doesn't find a way to break above these levels, and again, here we've got a bunch of moving averages that are just stuck in the way. If we don't find a way to break above this level, then maybe you've got just a plain old head and shoulder, and then all of a sudden you take this, you measure out your move here and here, drop that down to here, and then all of a sudden, oh boy, we're not even on the chart anymore. You're potentially down 17,264. Or again, if I was looking on my other chart, I had the price action, here and here, kind of in a rising channel, you lose that. Let's just say that, I don't have any trend lines there for you to see on this chart, but let's say that this was a rising channel and it's officially lost. This is maybe a bearish retest of it. Again, same thing. You're down here 17,000 and change. So, and this is, again, these moves are not sustainable. You can't just go straight up and never retest. So this is not an overly sustainable move here. But it was vastly oversold, put in some bullish divergence. So it's feasible that it could continue to the upside. And again, you've probably seen it's been fluctuating in like a $100 range really the whole time I've been talking. So, and then last thing here, let's just go ahead, zoom in on the 15-minute time frame. It continues to make positive moves here. You're still getting a ton of volume. Now the only thing is, and similar to like say over here, once you start to get to the bottom of a move or the top of a move, so here was the bottom of a move, massive volume comes in. Once you start to get to the top of a move, you can start to see the same concept play out. And then additionally, you come down here to the RSI, and maybe, from a 15-minute standpoint, maybe this thing could push up another 1 or 2 candles, and then it's going to have to retest. So it really just depends what happens here. We get a nice push out of this thing, and I think it pops up here into this region, and then we just hope it flips this into support, and then all of a sudden that's where we can go ahead and say, all right, well, let's measure out our move. And again, we're talking 19.7-ish based on that concept. And maybe it doesn't move straight there, but if I just take this and treat this maybe as a rising channel as well, you can see that in fact it does come very stinking close to touching that area. And then the 21 is coming up here as well, potential support. So there is some feasibility that this thing does go a little bit higher, and then whenever it does actually, because the reality is it shouldn't end up moving up out of this pattern. It should, when it gets up here, it probably will come back down and get some level of rejection. The only way that it if it doesn't fall out of here, then it probably, if it comes up here, then we hope for the positive retest here this time. And then, you could look up to this 20,000 range maybe. But otherwise, if it falls out of here, and let's just say that it comes up here and then just gets smoked down, then all of a sudden we're back down here at this 18.9 level. So we're going to see what happens here. But again, there are some things that look like we could make some positive strides, but again, that 19.2 level is a big deal. And again, you can see that there's a ton of volume right there at that level. And again, it seems fair to say that some of it is some sell volume. You got a bit of a rising wedge within this possible rising channel. So again, it could just start cascading back down this direction. Ideally, it doesn't fall below here, though. This is really going to be the line in the sand for me, at least at the moment, is this like 18.8, 18.9 range. It's going to be my temporary line in the sand. So again, ideally, that's our downside for the day. If not, then we start looking 18.5, and then actually potentially moving down 18.1, 17,000s. Upside, again, 19.7-ish, maybe if we get a positive bounce here, and then, break above this level and hold it, and you start to think that maybe that's a feasibility. But you can see here that Bitcoin does look like it's about to lose this little 15-minute uptrend. So we'll look out, again, right here is where I'm going to be looking right here. Otherwise, we're rolling down. So, all right, well, hey, that's pretty much it for the day. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I know we enjoy putting all this info together for you guys. Appreciate you more than we could tell you. Looking forward to catching up tomorrow.